Okay, well, good afternoon, folks. This is Jim Hodgson along with Garry Goff. We're out here at Sansom Park today in Fort Worth, and if you look behind us, you are going to see the Joint Reserve Base, Naval Air Station Fort Worth, and across the field you're going to see the Lockheed Martin plant. And we picked this spot because today we're going to be talking about the around-the-world flight conducted in February and March of 1949. And the flight took off from here. It was a B-50 Superfortress, and it's a little windy, so we're gonna try to make allowances for that. But the airplane that took off was a B-50 Superfortress, and it took off from here in Carswell. This was a super secret mission. There were 14 people on the airplane, and it was scheduled to make 4 refueling stops as it circumnavigated the globe. And the whole idea here was to show the Russians that we could deliver a bomber anywhere in the world anytime we needed to.
And when he said fuel stops, he meant the aerial refueling.
Aerial refueling.
And a B-50 is, imagine a B-29 bomber with giant turboprop engines on it.
And a bigger tail. It was just really kind of a beefed up B-29. And to accomplish the in-flight refuelings, they had, I believe it was 8 KB-29s stationed in the Azores, Saudi Arabia, the Philippines, and Hawaii as they were going to circumnavigate the globe. I've got a map of the...
It's amazing what they did.
Well, here's a picture of the 2 airplanes during refueling, and what we're really going to do is we're going to talk about refueling here, aerial refueling here today, because this is what this story is all about. It would not have been possible without that. And see if I can get the other picture here. Yeah, Garry, if you want to show them that one. This is a map of the route that they took when they flew the flight. They went to the east because you always go on this kind of thing. You're always going to go from west to east because you've got the prevailing winds as a tailwind, so you're not fighting that the whole time. The entire route was just short of 24,000 miles.
At a ground speed of just literally one mile an hour, 1 knot, less than 250.
Right, yeah.
Ground speed of 250 miles an hour, 250 knots. I don't remember which one.
Yeah, the flight took 96 hours and 1 minute.
Now,
I can tell you from my airline days, I flew one flight that was 16 hours, and I thought I was going to go crazy.
That's right.
So with 14 people on the airplane, I'm sure it was an augmented crew that they took when they flew it. And when they returned here 4 days later, they were welcomed by the Secretary of the Department of Defense and a number of other dignitaries here. But what I think we wanted to talk about a little bit is the evolution of aerial refueling, which was what this story was really all about. If you look in Google, if you Google or Wikipedia, they're going to tell you it was 1923 was the start of aerial refueling up in New York, but it really wasn't. There was attempts to do aerial refueling here during the First World War with Ormer Locklear and some of the people in Jenny's. They were experimenting with what they could do, and they tried taking cans of fuel and hanging a hose down below the airplane so that it could get to the guys below, which was actually the way aerial refueling was done for a while.
Long time like that.
Yeah, a long time. There were a number of different endurance flights. One of the more famous ones was the one that was done here in Fort Worth with James Kelly and Reg Robbins, and they stayed airborne for I don't remember the exact amount of time right now, but they stayed airborne for, I think it was almost 7 days, overhead Meacham Field. And so there are pictures of their brome being refueled airborne by just simply putting a hose over and the crew taking it and bringing it into the airplane and pumping the fuel in. So that's the way it went until the 1930s when the British got involved.
Yeah, the RAF, boy, I wish I could remember that guy's name, but
Colburn or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
He had a system that was called the, what was it, the loop and hook?
Loop and hook.
The loop and hook, and I can tell you that, and this is the way this airplane they did it with the B-29s, and I'm going to show it to you again. And I'm amazed that they didn't crash more airplanes with this one. If you notice off the back of the airplanes, there is what looks like a hose that extends from one to the other, from the tail from one to the other. This is not a drogue and hose, which is common in naval aviation today. But what they actually had were grappling hooks that came out of the back of both airplanes, and one airplane, the receiver would snag the grapple and pull it into the airplane, and the hose would follow it. Now, I've seen a little bit of a video on this.
I mean, this is crazy stuff. I mean, you're flying an airplane, so you'd be flying the B-50 on this thing, and the tanker aircraft is going to come from behind, whereas when you and I refueled, the receiver came from behind, but the tanker aircraft is going to come from behind you. He's going to pick up the wire visually that is hanging from you, the receiver airplane, and then he's going to fly a crisscross pattern behind you, hoping that the hose from the tanker snags the cable or whatever it is from the receiver, and then the receiver is going to reel that thing back in, and then he's going to connect it to the airplane, and then it's going to be gravity fed.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So it was crazy. They used it for a while. They used it for a number of years.
Brave people.
Yeah, this was in the 40s. The British finally decided to stop using it because they didn't have any real reason to refuel airplanes where we did. And then the same person who invented that originally went to the drogue and hose.
Right, and you know more about the drogue refueling than I do, because obviously I didn't do it. I was in the Air Force, and I mean, but this loop is the idea that they got to go ahead and make the probe and drogue, which is what you refueled off of, which is, I think, is crazy that you would do that. I mean, even that sounds crazy to me, but there's a whole lot of the Navy and Marine Corps that do it that way, which, you can't get too mad at them because it's still crazy.
One of the primary reasons the Navy and the Marine Corps use the drogue and hose is because if you're operating off of a carrier, you can put what's called a buddy store on an airplane, like an A7 or an A6 or even F-18s now.
Yeah.
And they can go up around the boat, and they can be a gas station for somebody if they're short on fuel trying to get them aboard. So if you're out, you can't bingo to land.
Right.
You've got the capability of doing this, and what it is a hose with essentially a drogue chute on the end of it, and it kind of stabilizes behind the airplane, and you fly your airplane up to it, extend your refueling probe, and then attempt to stick the probe into the basket, as it's called. We often refer to it as fencing with the basket because it doesn't always work the way you want it to.
Is the drogue always stable, or does the drogue kind of move around?
The drogue can move around. And,
that's lovely.
And if you don't sneak up on it right with the airplane, it kind of goes around the airplane. And people have come back to land with the drogue still hooked onto the refueling probe, or with their windscreens or the canopy broken out from this thing beating it around. The Air Force uses a different system, which Garry can talk about.
That makes more sense, but there's this great RF4 picture with the drogue stuck in on the probe, and it's cut off over here, and he's bringing it home. I can't imagine. I mean, did that happen? Not a lot, but I mean, did it happen enough to where you said, "Oh, okay, so what?"
No, it didn't happen a lot. You did not want to bring the drogue home.
Landing on a carrier with this drogue stuck in your probe.
You'd come home with the drogue on your probe, and
you had to buy beer.
Well, at least you'd find cartoons on the bulletin boards and new names and things like that.
Oh, Lordy mighty!
You didn't want that. I noticed we got Jim Bloomberg on with us today too, and
he's a boomer.
And Jim is a boomer. He actually operated the booms on airplanes, refueling Air Force airplanes. But go ahead and talk about what that's like a little bit.
So imagine you have I'm going to see if we can do this because I need both hands. Okay, so here's the tanker aircraft. Here's the tanker aircraft right here. And it's usually a 707 or a DC-10, at least back when I was flying them. So we call them a KC-135 or a KC-10. And so they're sitting here, and the fighters are back here, back behind it, and we check in at a contact point, and then the tanker crew clears us into the pre-contact point. We drive the four ship up near the aircraft. One of the aircraft, typically number 2, goes here. Number 3 and 4 come over here on this side, and 1 drives up to get the gas. And you'll drive up close enough for me. The refueling
receptacle is on my left side, because on the F-15 it's not in front or not behind you like on your F-4,
Yeah.
or which was directly behind you. It's more kind of like your A-4, which had the probe sticking out on the side, and so you drive up with it, and the refueling thing sits right here. I mean, literally you could reach out and grab it, and once you get stabilized underneath there, then he'll stick you, and you can sometimes feel your airplane dip as the guy sticks you with this big, huge, gigantic fuel, whatever you call them, the boom,
Okay.
whatever it is, and it would stick you, and then they'd lock onto it. It'd lock onto your
So
airplane.
you didn't move.
No,
Okay.
I would drive in, and then I would move a little bit because I got lazy,
Yeah.
or I fell asleep, or did something really important like that. And we had lights on the tanker that said fore and aft and left and right.
And see, we had, with the drogue, we would go up and stabilize behind the drogue, and then go ahead, and when we were cleared in, we'd go in, engage the drogue, and then we had to push the hose in.
Not
it
us.
was 10 or 15 feet. So we had lights too. It was a contact light,
Right.
and then it was a light to let us know that we were taking on fuel.
We had just had lights on position.
Okay.
It's so much easier doing it this way. Your way is crazy, but my way, the Air Force way, man, when you got stuck, you knew you were in contact and the fuel was flowing, and you just had to stay there and basically sit there and fly information with the aircraft.
Well,
the 10 was weird because of that engine that was up on the tail on the KC-10s, because you gave you a little bit of turbulent flow.
Okay.
But on the 135s, the 707 is a piece of cake.
Well, and the whole idea here with the the aerial refueling has a lot of distinct purposes. In addition to being able to keep an airplane airborne for a long period of time, you can also, in many cases, carry a bigger payload and take off with less fuel.
Yes.
Then be refueled after you take off and you've burned down some fuel. So it gives you the chance to have a bigger payload if you're going in for a bombing attack or something along those lines. It also gives you the extended range. The extended range capability. And in many cases, if you've got a problem with the airplane, an emergency situation, it can give you the opportunity to stay airborne and sort it out, drag you to another airfield that may have the capabilities of handling you easier. In some cases at the boat, you don't want to go board the boat with some problems, but you can have an airplane with a buddy store drag you up to shore where you can get a foamed runway or those kinds of things. So at the point in time that the Lucky Lady 2, which was the name of the airplane, and actually it was the Lucky Lady 2 because 2 days before the Global Queen, which was going to be the airplane to do it, broke down. I think it broke down in the Azores.
And Azores had an engine problem.
And so they couldn't continue the flight. So the Lucky Lady 2 went ahead and continued and flew the mission. 14 people on board. I haven't been able to find out a lot about what it was like to be on board. We had one person come up and tell us that they had I think it was a father and an uncle who were involved in the mission, and so we'd really like to have anybody who knows more about the mission or people who are involved. We'd really like to interview them and bring them out. But it all took place right here
there.
from this airfield, right here.
There. They took off and came back right there.
It was Tarrant Army U.S. Air Force Air Base at the time, but on the other side of the field, it would have been consolidated. But it looks not unlike what it looks like today. You can see on this side, you may be able to see the tails of the C-130s. From the Air Force Reserve units and some of the other aircraft, and then across the field is Lockheed Martin, where they're producing the F-35s. But the whole idea of aerial refueling is something that has started back into the First World War. If they want to say it was 1923, that's fine, but we know that some of that took place here in 1918 or so during the First World War.
And remember, too, that what Jim said earlier is a critical element for guys that are flying something that's going to be dropping ordnance on a target. Because my uncle flew F-105s out of Korat, or Tockley, I can't remember, one of the two, over Thud Ridge into Hanoi. My dad was a tanker pilot. Matter of fact, we saw Jim Blueberger there. I think my dad and his dad were sat alert back in the day. And they would just take off. I mean, they're fully loaded with 750-pound bombs on a whole bunch of them, and we have a 105 that you can come look at the museum to see it. And it's going to take off in single engine and afterburner takeoff, which drinks. You and I both know how much, like the F4 just drank it.
Just drank it.
Oh, it just was like, oh my gosh. And so once they get airborne, they would hit the tank on what we call a pre-strike refueling. They'd hit the tanker and they'd top off with enough gas so they could get to the target, and they didn't have enough gas to get back.
Right.
So they had to pick up the tanker, which we call post-strike refueling, and they would come off the target. They'd only have maybe 2 or 3 minutes that's it, 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah.
In the F-15 that I flew, we planned on 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That's it, 5 minutes in the combat zone in afterburner, and we had to get out of there.
Yeah.
And so then they would pick up the tankers coming home, and my dad, the nice thing about our version is that his tanker could help lock on to the fighter that was damaged and drag him, literally drag him over to where it's safe for them to eject or whatever they had to do coming off of Hanoi. So, I mean, this is a huge advantage to any tactical fighters or even the bombers, the B-52s that are carrying... It's 108 Mark 82s, I think I read. My uncle was a bomb nav on the B-52. That's a whole lot of tonnage that's underneath your jet. And you've got to bring this stuff to the target, and then you got to get it home. And so that's what makes it so cool about aerial refueling that you and I both have done and experienced why this is so good, why it just extends the range of fighters.
Well, and it isn't even just the fighters. You know, if you take a look at Blackhawks these days,
see
a probe on the Blackhawks.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
And so they're not being stuck. They're doing a drogue and hose method to be able to do that. So the helicopters being able to refuel has been a huge deal. So this kind of thing, one of the things I wanted to mention is Garry said that in the Air Force they were using 135s and KC-10s. In the Marine Corps we used 130s because that's the organic airplane, and that's what the Navy uses too. So when we were doing it in the F4, one of the things with it is the Herc is going to be going 250 knots nose down fast as it possibly can, and we're going to sit there hanging on the probe, trying to refuel the airplane. And they would sometimes do what they called a sleigh ride maneuver, where they were going up and down hill, so that they could maintain the speed and be a little bit faster while you would be in there. And I can tell you, as you are starting to get heavier and heavier, the airplane is sitting back and sitting back and sitting back, and you feel like you're going to just literally fall off the basket. You know, and so then you'd break away,
crazy.
And the next guy would come in, and in some respects you got used to it in the daytime, and it almost became fun, right?
On the day, you wouldn't do it at night.
But then we had to do it at night also.
Yeek, yuck.
None of the aviation stuff that I did in the Marine Corps, there wasn't much of it at night that was fun.
No.
Going aboard a carrier at night, if anybody tells you it was fun, they're lying to you because they've never done it.
That's right, they've never done it.
and tanking on a C-130 at night when you're just looking at position lights. You know, you don't have an anti-smash light because that's going to give you flicker vertigo, and you don't want to be looking at too many lights because then you're staring at those and you'll get kinetic. You'll get the autokinesis effect and start doing weird things. So it's always an adventure.
And we would, one of the missions I remember, we had a 4-ship that out of Kadena, Okinawa, Japan, at night, and you talk, even on a 135 it's ugly because at night, everything's weird at night. At night, the tanker would not move out of the broken cloud deck for whatever reason. We don't know why. So you're in and out of clouds, and that rotating beacon's going around, and you're in and out, and you're in and out. The next thing we know, number 2, who is on the boom, disconnects, rolls over, and then starts to dive with full afterburner because he thought the boats in the water at night that were fishing were the stars, and he got disoriented, and he thought he was going to the stars. And you could see one go, well, I'm out of here, and he starts chasing number 2 to keep them from plowing into the water. And I remember getting on the boom, and the only way I could stay on the boom was screaming at the top of my lungs just to hang on and watch the lights underneath the airplane. It just is so disorienting. That flicker vertigo, you lose all sense of what's up and what's down. You are not kidding, Jim. This is crazy.
Okay, David Anderson's got a comment here. He says, I just read an article that says the KC-46 is having problems coming online. I haven't heard about any of that.
Oh, is that the Airbus 76, something like that?
That would be the new Airbus one.
Yeah, I imagine it will. It's a tough thing to do.
Yeah.
To be able to haul all that gas and then be able to use the boom, and it's got a probe on it also, so you can retank. I mean, you can tank anything.
You can tank
anything at any time. So that's pretty cool.
Well, we were talking about night flying here, so I've got to
Night
just throw
flying's
this.
scary.
I got to just throw this out. I'm going to ask Gary if he knows the difference here. Do you know the difference between fear and terror?
A couple of letters.
Fear is a night noise in an airplane.
Yes.
Terror is a night noise accompanied by a warning light.
Ah, yuck. Night is a whole different world, man.
Yeah, so it truly is. So if you've got some questions, go ahead and ask them. Apparently the sound is pretty good here today, even though it's a little bit windy. We can see the screen, and we'd be glad to answer the questions. But it's important to note that one of the obscure parts of aviation heritage here is right here at Carswell, or when it was Carswell, and the beginning of true long-range aerial refueling when they circumnavigated the globe. And it also pointed out some of the fallacies of the hook and loop system.
Oh, yes.
And other ones became, well, pretty much the norm after that.
Because hook and loop, you have to remember, it's gravity fed. It's not fuel pumped.
Yeah.
Like in yours and mine.
Right.
So you just got to sit there and wait for the gas to drip down into your bird, and that takes a long time.
Well, in some of the pictures I've seen, the receiver was up above. I mean, the tanker was up above the receiver, so you're blind. I mean, you're sitting there,
no way,
passing gas to this guy, and he's underneath you, and you can't see him. So, got Glenn Williams here wants to tell us what's the only position the military pays you to lay down.
He must be a boomer
Tanker
on a
refueler.
135. yeah, because the KC-10 doesn't do it. So you got to be a 135 guy.
So anything else you'd like to talk about here about the aerial refueling or the significance of that flight?
For me, it was one of the most rewarding things to do because my dad was he first flew B-47, so he did that they call it a toboggan.
Yeah, right.
With the KC-97, which was a transport airplane converted. But then he went to the 135. So for me, as his son, it was very rewarding to come up underneath the tanker, a 135, and I always made sure, just because out of respect to my dad, that every time I came off the boom, I would salute the boomer, because my dad took wonderful pictures in Vietnam, all that kind of stuff, to let me see what it was like to be a refueling. So it was a very rewarding experience when I finally got to go to the boom. And I loved tanking. Pre and post tanking was so cool.
Yeah.
It's just, besides, you're just a couple of feet away from this big gas station, and if you screw this thing up, we're going to become vapor, because it's going to explode big time. That's a lot of gas on those airplanes. Holy cow.
Okay, Jim, that one I don't know. Jim Bloomberg says NKAWTG, and I'm not certain what that one is.
Yeah, that's above a fighter pilot's head. I don't know.
He's going to have to explain that one for us, but yeah, not certain at all what that one is. So at any rate, we wanted to just bring this all to your attention. We know it happens later in February, but we've got some other topics for this month in February, and that this one actually extended into March. So we wanted to let you all know about this. This is one of the little pieces of aviation history that's kind of in the background. Which one you got there?
Crew.
That's the crew. And crew of 14, which was an augmented crew. I think the captain, the
aircraft commander
was James Gallagher, I believe.
Ooh, cool
and
name.
Then you've got one other picture there of what the lucky lady looks like most recently. There she is.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
I didn't even know that. I missed that.
It's
being restored.
She still exists, and she's out at Chino. I understand. I think it's at the Plains of Fame in Chino. So these histories are still out here, and this is just one of many stories here in North Texas.
And the nice thing here is that we've got Fifi, a B-29 that's in the local area, and we'll see it on Saturdays doing pattern work at Meacham. Yeah. So you get a real good idea of what it sounds like, which is amazing, and what it and how big it is or how small it is, depending on your perspective.
It's the same size as a 737.
I know, that just gets me.
Next to it one day, and it just amazed me. We got a note here from Colby Mason. Nobody kicks ass without tanker gas.
Yep, I've heard that before.
Oh, maybe that's what Jim was. Was that what Jim had on there?
I don't
That might
know.
be. Nobody
I don't know.
kicks ass without tanker gas. And
That's true.
It's also true. It's all part of a team effort. But it was because of the flight that took place here was one of the reasons that they changed the method for refueling. And it's still essentially the same method that took over in the 50s is in practice today, and I would imagine it will probably stay that way
For a very long time.
a very long time. I mean, they are both about as simple as you can get. So, unless there's any other questions or comments, I'd like to thank you all for being here with us today. We're going to do something on Saturday. We don't know what. We may do an update on the bird dog, or if you've all got some suggestions about what you'd like to see.
Yeah, please do. We would, if you have an idea of something that you would like to know more about, or us to talk about, or us to show, please send it in, because we're more than happy to do something off the wall, so to speak, outside the norm of the what we typically do. So send in a suggestion. We'd love to do it.
Yep, absolutely. And so for now, from Sansom Park, and this is a really nice little park.
Yes, it
We're
is.
at, the Marion Sampson Pavilion number 2 that overlooks the base. My guess is there's probably a number of people who come up here and do some photography, but you're going to have a big lens. But it's a great overview of the base from here. So from Sansom Park, it's Garry Goff and Jim Hodgson with the Fort Worth Aviation Museum, home to the most touchable warbirds in Texas. Thanks for joining us today, and we will be with you on Saturday.
See ya.
See ya.